In this problem, we're going to be using different conversion factors in order to solve a typical kind of a dosage problem. So we see, reading the problem, a dose of 360 milligrams of acetaminophen is prescribed for a child. Let's analyze that to make sense of what we're given. We're given that we have a dose of 360 milligrams of acetaminophen. Just analyzing that, we can see that that is not a conversion factor. Rather, that is what I call just a piece of data. It has only one unit associated with it, milligrams. Continuing on, if 1 teaspoon contains 5 milliliters, so let's analyze that information. 1 teaspoon contains 5 milliliters. There's 5 milliliters per teaspoon. All of these things point to this being a conversion factor. We have 2 units where they are set to be equal to each other. 1 teaspoon is equal to 5 milliliters. Not a piece of data, but a good conversion factor. How many teaspoons of children's Tylenol that has 40 milligrams of acetaminophen per 2.5 milliliters? You can see once again that is a conversion factor. So we can rewrite it that 40 milligrams of acetaminophen is equal to 2.5 milliliters of the Tylenol. So how much of that Tylenol must be administered? So if we look and see what we see we have a piece of data. Pieces of data are very good starting points. And we see that we're trying to get to an answer in terms of teaspoons of children's Tylenol. So let's make a roadmap for where we're trying to do. We're going from milligrams of acetaminophen into teaspoons of Tylenol. If we look and see what conversion factors we have, there's no direct conversion factor that's going to get us from milligrams of acetaminophen to teaspoons of Tylenol in one step. None of our conversion factors have milligrams of acetaminophen on one side and teaspoons on the other side. So this is going to be a multi-step problem. So, if we look and see what do we know about milligrams of acetaminophen, we know that there's 40 milligrams per 2.5 milliliters of Tylenol. That's going to be our first conversion factor in the parentheses of a dimensional analysis. So we're going to be able to get from milligrams of acetaminophen into milliliters of Tylenol. Not where we want to be though. We want to go one step further and convert that milliliters of Tylenol into teaspoons. We can use our next conversion factor, that 1 teaspoon is equal to 5 milliliters, in order to get us there. Each one of those arrows, again, is a parenthesis in our dimensional analysis. So let's see how it works out. We're going to start our dimensional analysis with our piece of data, 360 milligrams of acetaminophen on the outside. I recommend that you keep both your units and your label with you. These simpler problems, it's a little bit straightforward. You don't necessarily need them, but if you get in the habit now, when we get to more complicated problems down the line, you'll appreciate it. Okay. Our first step is to get from milligrams to milliliters. We're going to use the conversion factor that 40 milligrams of acetaminophen is found in every 2.5 milliliters of the Tylenol. The 40 milligrams of acetaminophen goes on the bottom in order to cancel out the milligrams of acetaminophen that's on the top from where we started. If we stopped right here, our units would be in terms of milliliters of Tylenol. We want to go one step further. Our second conversion factor tells us that every 5 milliliters of the Tylenol can be found in every 1 teaspoon of the Tylenol. So now that we can stop here, our answer is going to be in terms of teaspoons of Tylenol. So let's make sure that everything cancels as it should. Milligrams of acetaminophen on the top cancels with milligrams of acetaminophen on the bottom. Milliliters of Tylenol on the top cancels with milliliters of Tylenol on the bottom. And we're left with teaspoons of Tylenol as our unit. Now all we have to do is the math. So we're going to say 360 times 2.5 equals divided by 40 equals divided by 5. And our answer is 4.5 teaspoons of Tylenol. In order to get a dosage of 360 milligrams of acetaminophen, our child would have to receive 4.5 teaspoons of that Tylenol.